We had some pretty interesting weather scenarios. The worst had to have been when the power went out for a long period of time and it got very, very hot. It's super humid and hot in the summertime. And when the power goes out, it's definitely not fun, especially if you're in a high-rise apartment building. So that's pretty tough. Every time that it snows in DC and Maryland, it knocks down a bunch of branches, and the branches always happen to hit power lines. And so just expect the power to go out on a regular basis. The winds pick up on occasion, but the thing that I think surprised me the most was the amount of rain that it gets there. In fact, when it rains, it pours. I'm sure everybody's heard that saying before, but it really does pour when it rains in DC. It doesn't usually rain for a very long period of time, but it really comes down when it does. And so rain gear and preparing for the weather was definitely a factor that I needed to learn while I was out there. A random skill. I learned how to work out without any weights or anything. Using filled up water jugs and couches and dressers and all kinds of things that helped us to try and stay in shape. That was an interesting skill. But eventually we were actually allowed to get gym memberships, and that was quite the blessing, even though a lot of my companions weren't too happy or fond of that. Another skill that I learned was the ability to get along with and to even relate to all different kinds of people. I was able to present myself in a way that worked around public officials, around wealthy businessmen. I was able to eat dinner at their houses in a way that rubbed shoulders with those people in a polite way. But I also was able to get along with the people in the hood, which I gained so much respect for. They have a way of doing things that's a little bit different from everybody else, but they do have a system, and they do have a genuine way of presenting themselves. And it was just really neat learning how to get along with people in that situation, as well as those that were very wealthy and influential in the world. There's this group called the Black Hebrews or the Black Israelites. And I probably shouldn't say this because it's going to scare some people, but they like to film mostly white people, mostly Caucasians, especially missionaries, to put up on their website in a way that kind of dehumanizes them. And we ran into a few of these Black Hebrews. In fact, on one instance, we were taking a recent convert to an investigator lesson, and we got approached by a couple of these Black Israelites, and they at first acted like they were interested in what we had to share. And pretty soon the conversation switched, and they had some very hostile things to say. They were trying to convince our recent convert, who was an African American, that what she had done was a complete mistake. And they were saying some accurate and some very inaccurate facts about church history. We ended up going to that lesson and leaving them behind, but believe it or not, they waited for us in the lobby of the apartment building. But not only did they wait, they went and got a Book of Mormon in which they had marked up in certain areas where they had prepared to confront missionaries about, and ended up following us for quite a ways. And the thing that I learned was the less I said to them, the angrier they got, because we weren't giving them what they wanted. They wanted us to attack back. They wanted us to rebuttal with them. But I realized that it wasn't worth my time because their logic and their way of thinking was so outrageous that anything I said wouldn't make an impact. And so once I started to ignore them completely and acted like I was the most comfortable person in the world and was enjoying my day, they eventually gave up. And that was an interesting experience. I had that happen on several occasions and with several companions. And it's not an easy thing to keep working past opposition like that, but it's definitely a good learning experience, and it's worth going through. I remember getting taken out to steak dinners a lot and to really, really fancy restaurants, but I would say the most common meal that I had since I served in Anacostia for a long period of time was fried chicken collard greens, watermelon, and grape drink. So expect that when you go to the ghetto areas. Some people, they want to feed the missionaries, and it's hard because they don't want to let you leave. And so it's good to tell them right up front that you've got somewhere to be at a certain time so that they don't get offended when it's time for you to go teach some lessons. My mission was just completely filled with difficult experiences. It was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I could go on for days about this. One of the difficult things was losing my girlfriend. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think the thing that kept reoccurring and caused me so much heartache and difficulty was the drama that I faced within the mission with those that I was on the same team with. And it's kind of tough because we're all young and we try as hard as we can to serve the Lord in ways that we know are right, but it's difficult. Because when we're investing our full time into something, we want to reap the benefits of that. And so when one person gains a lot of success, it's hard for us not to become jealous, not to become envious of that success. And so as a result, I'm sure my pride had a lot to do with it. But as a result, when I was finding a lot of success on the internet, and as I was finding success with baptisms and with teaching, and with mission presidents pulling me aside and chatting with me in front of other missionaries, I got a lot of opposition. And that opposition was very difficult to endure. It was hard for me not to harden my heart and to be angry with those around me. But as I continually prayed for the strength to forgive and to forget, the strength came. And I was able to look at those people as individuals who are on the same journey as me, trying to figure out how to become a better servant of the Lord. And when I saw them as that, I didn't hold anything against them. And in fact, it helped me to humble myself. And it taught me not to judge other people, not to jump to conclusions, and definitely not to become jealous when other people are enjoying a lot of success. So when I got home, I jumped right into school almost immediately. It was like a week after getting home. I would recommend to any returning missionary to not take a break. Because taking a break, it simply gets you out of good habits. It causes you to go from a state of progression to a state of idleness. And it's hard to get out of a state of idleness once you get in it, just like most of us were before the mission. And so my recommendation would be to, even before you get home, yes, I think it's okay to think about this before you get home. Figure out what you're going to be doing for school. Figure out as much as you can with work, and put things together and come up with a schedule for immediately after you get home. For me, the transition was so easy because I just went from one super busy schedule to another super busy schedule. And the stress level stayed the same. The amount of work I had stayed the same. And so as a result, it really wasn't much of a transition at all. So I would highly recommend jumping into whatever you're going to start doing immediately after you get home.